a really powerful story. Please stay tuned for that. And then, of course, guys, about halfway through the show, we've got our featured and honored and esteemed guest, Mojo, here tonight, guys. Again, you want Auntie, what's good, bro? We want to, thank you for that. We want to showcase his story, guys, because it's a very powerful story. I know it's going to reach a lot of you guys. It's going to touch you guys. It's already touched me, and I only know a little bit of it. So stay tuned for that. Now, guys, and I'm not always able to thank each and every one of you for your individual gifts, but I want to thank you now before we get the show started in advance for each and every gift. Guys, by the way, I just got a feeling we are hitting 40 milli tonight. So now if my guest is in the box, of course I'm going to be respectful, but I'm saying that we're going to hit 40 milli tonight. So if we hit 40 milli, we may put the show on pause for about 30 seconds so we can celebrate that, so we can enjoy it, and then we'll get back to the content. If we don't, well, we will forgive all of you guys. But, and I hope you'll forgive me. But I just got I don't know, I just got a really strong feel. I feel it, Annie. I feel it's coming. I usually don't get feelings like this. You know, I'm just like, what happens? I just got a feeling it's happening tonight. But anyways, so let's get started, guys. Let's talk about what forgiveness is. So we all are on the same page about what it means. So the definition of forgiveness is releasing the right to hate, releasing the right to take revenge, and in so doing, releasing ourselves from the chains of victimhood. I'm going to say that again. Forgiveness is releasing the right to hate, releasing the right to revenge, and in so doing, releasing ourselves from the chains of victimhood. Awesome. Now, if you'll notice, guys, it doesn't say we're releasing the person who hurt us from the consequences of their actions. Did you hear me say that? So a lot of people get forgiveness confused with pardoning. So when we pardon someone, right, we basically excuse their behavior. We excuse them from the consequences of their actions. Now, we get this from the biblical Abrahamic concept of forgiveness, right? When we go to God and say, God, forgive me of my sins, wipe me clean as snow, take my sins and throw them away. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about forgiveness. That's pardoning. That's why if you ever hear of pardoning, have you guys ever heard of a presidential or a gubernatorial pardon? During a pardon, they release someone from jail, even though they did what they did, and they're releasing them from the consequences of their action. That's not what forgiveness is. We can still hold people accountable for the consequences of what they did to us, but we can do so with a pure heart, free of resentment, free of anger, free from hurt, and free from toxicity. And if we do that, we make healthy decisions. We make healthy decisions first and foremost for ourselves so that we can not be victims and that we can live in freedom, free of the action that that person has done unto us, so that that person's actions do not dictate what we do from here on out. Okay, so let's talk about why that may be difficult, right? So when someone hurts us, right, what is our immediate reaction? When someone hurts us, our immediate reaction is we want to hurt them back, right? You hurt me, you need to be hurt. It's only fair. It seems just, right? It speaks to a misguided sense of justice that's within us, right? Revenge. We feel like it's necessary, right? We feel like it's necessary for the person who hurt us to feel that hurt that they put upon us, or maybe even feel a hurt that's even worse. Sometimes when we're hurt, right, when someone hurts us, we were like, oh, we want to one-up them, right? We want to make them more hurt than they hurt us, right? Has anybody ever felt that way? Oh, you hurt me. Oh, I'm going to do one better. I'm going to hurt you even worse. The problem is that when we walk around with that hatred in our heart, when we walk around with that weight of negativity and toxicity that's weighing on our shoulders, the only person we're actually bringing down is ourselves. Now think about this for a minute. You're walking around, you hate this person. Let's say John hurt you, right? John hurt you, John stabbed you in the back, and you're walking around every day. God, I hate that John. Oh, that John, that mother effer. I hate that guy. Do you think John is out there going somewhere going, oh, wow, Mor hates me. I can feel it. He's walking around with all this anger and all this resentment on his heart. Man, I should really change my ways. That person's not thinking about you. John ain't thinking about you. John ain't thinking about what he did to you. John did what he did, and that's it. Okay, now there may be situations where you can make up with John, there may be situations where there can be reconciliation, but when you walk around with hatred on your heart, you're the one who's being affected by that. And here's the problem, is that we all know, we've all heard this from a young age, that hurt people hurt people. So when we walk around harboring that hatred, harboring that hurt, harboring that all those toxicity and negative feelings that accompany unforgiveness, what that does is that weighs on us, and we end up taking that out on the person, on the people in our lives that we're closest to, whether we intend to or not, whether it's subconscious or conscious, whether it's direct or indirect. We take that out on our coworkers, our family, our friends, our kids, right? We're literally drinking poison and hoping that the other person who hurt us dies. But the person that's being hurt is us, because we're walking around every day weighing down, being hurt, and we're going to take that hurt out on people's lives. Now, the thing is, right, is that we feel in a weird way that when we hold on to unforgiveness, that we're holding on to some sort of power, right? We're holding on to some, we're tough, right? We're not going to let someone punk us. We're not going to let someone hurt us and get away with it, right? But the problem is because you're harboring all those negative feelings and you're walking around with them every day, when you go to work, when you come home, when you spend time with your friends, when you spend time with your family, what you're actually doing is giving that person who hurt you more power. Now, why would you want to give the person who hurt you more power? Why would you want to give that person more dictation over what happens in your life? You're walking around every day. Thank you for the dice. You're walking around every day your actions being dictated, your mood being dictated by something that somebody else did to you that hurt you. Now, why would you want to do that? Why would you want your actions and what you do and what you say being dictated by someone else? Think about that for a second. Now, think about this. Now, not only does that person have power over you, but now, because we end up taking that hurt out on people that we're close to, that person has power over the people that we care about. Think about that. So now we're giving that person power, not only over us, we're giving that person power over the people in our lives that we care about. So you're giving that person who hurt you more power over the people who are closest to you. Think about that. Now, you may think, oh, but that person I need to get back at that person. The thing is, that is not going to bring you peace. That's not going to bring you justice, because even after that happens, as long as you're harboring on to that hurt and that resentment and that revenge, you're going to be weighed down. Your actions are going to be, and your words are going to be dictated. Say that forgiveness is releasing the right to hate. Why do we say that forgiveness is releasing the right to take revenge? The reason is actually pretty simple, because you may not actively, let's say someone hurts you, right? And you're not actively hating that person. You're not actively taking revenge against that person. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, I may not be hating that person. I may not be taking revenge against that person. But if I wanted to, they deserve it. Right? Has you ever thought that in your head? Like, I may not be taking revenge against that person, but if I wanted to, they deserve it. I have the right to do that based on what they did to me. The problem with that is that as long as we're holding on to that right so tightly, and as long as we're holding on to that feeling that we deserve to hurt that person, and that person deserves to get hurt, that's still allowing that person to occupy space rent-free in your heart, rent-free in your mind, rent-free in your spirit. You're giving that person power, even if you're not actively taking a role in hurting them back. Exactly. And to answer the question that someone asked, you don't always have to confront person. Forgiveness is first and foremost for who, guys? Forgiveness is first and foremost for ourselves so that we can live in freedom. We want to live in freedom, free of that hatred, free of that burden of having that dark cloud that walks over us. We want to live our lives free and powerful and independent of what someone else did to us. We want to live unattached to that hurt. And that's not an easy thing to do. And we're going to talk about that in our forgiveness challenge here in a few minutes. But that is the secret to forgiveness. Forgiveness is synonymous with another F word. No, not that F word. Forgiveness is synonymous with freedom. Forgiveness is synonymous with freedom. Very good, Vic. So when we forgive, we are taking our freedom back. Now, absolutely you can. And it doesn't happen overnight, guys. Now I'm sitting here and I'm saying, oh, you need to forgive this person. You need to release these dark emotions that you have. It's not something that you can always just snap your fingers and do. Sometimes forgiveness is a process. Often my guests talk about forgiveness as a journey. It's a journey. It's a lifelong journey that you take in order to forgive that person sometimes, especially if the hurt is really deep. Now, we talked about the static definition of forgiveness, which is releasing the right to hate, releasing the right to revenge, and in so doing, releasing ourselves from the chains of victimhood. But what is that second part saying? We're releasing ourselves from the chains of victimhood. None of us want to be victims. Forgiveness is about releasing ourselves, okay? When we release those dark feelings that we have towards others, that allows us to live up to our full potential. That allows us to live up to our full freedom and allows us to live a life that is independent of that person who hurt us. Now that we've talked about that static definition, let's talk about the dynamic aspect of forgiveness. Because forgiveness, when we talk about it in a dynamic sense, right? It can look very different in different people's lives, okay? So when you forgive someone, it's going to be different depending on who the person who hurt you. It's going to be different depending on what they did. You're going to forgive someone, for example, very differently who may have made a derogatory comment towards you at work, right? Maybe they said something rude or something disrespectful, okay? You're going to forgive somebody who did that a lot different than you're going to forgive a close person in a relationship who cheated on you, because you have a very close connection with that person. You have a very close a relationship with that person. So that pain is going to be a lot deeper. And the consequences are going to be deeper too. Because remember, when we forgive, we're not releasing that person of the consequences of their decision. We still hold them accountable, but we hold them accountable with a pure heart and without malice and without dark and toxic feelings. That's the key. We can let's take the example of someone who cheats on us, right? We may or may not be able to reconcile that relationship. Okay. But when we forgive, we're going to work every day towards making sure what they did to us doesn't dictate our actions. We don't want our future relationships. We don't want our friendships. We don't want our relationships with our family members to be dictated by that person who cheated on us, because that can send us into a very dark place, right? So there's different aspects of forgiveness and there's different ramifications and there's different levels. It's going to depend on who hurt us. It's going to depend on where in that spectrum that pain falls on. On one side of the spectrum, someone says a derogatory comment, you may just be able to let it go. On the other side of the spectrum, if someone hurt or maybe killed someone that you love, that forgiveness is going to look very, very different. It's going to look very, very different. Sometimes forgiveness, like even though you may forgive someone, there may be consequences of that forgiveness. And that may mean on one end of the spectrum, that person goes to prison, right? We can still, want them to be held accountable, want them to be face justice for what they did without wishing ill upon them, without wanting bad things to happen to them. We can still seek justice. Now, you may be asking yourself, how do I know if I'm seeking revenge or if I'm seeking justice or if I'm being held accountable? Ask yourself this question. When someone hurts you and you respond, are you doing what's best for you or are you doing what's worst for them? Because if you're focused on what's doing worst for them, you are seeking revenge. This is absolutely unhealthy, and you're going to be weighed down in your personal life every day because of that. But if you're seeking to do what's best for you, you can still administer consequences. You can still have healthy boundaries. You can still do what's best for you and hold that person accountable. But again, we're focusing on what is best for us and not what's worse for them. Now, if you're just joining us, this is Forgiveness Culture, guys. Every week we talk about forgiveness, the hope and peace that can be found in forgiveness. We just got done talking about the definition, the static and dynamic definition of forgiveness. And I want to shout out my top 3 gifters, Chemo, Tamara, and Auntie. Still searching for that 40 milli. You never know when it could come up, guys. So make sure your screen recordings are ready, because you just never know who's going to pop in and steal that thing. It's close. Now, every week we talk about a different challenge of forgiveness that may make forgiveness a little difficult. And something we don't talk a whole lot about on this show, and we're going to talk about it right now on our forgiveness challenge, is how do we forgive when we may not be angry, but we're maybe very, very hurt. All right. How do we forgive when we're just in pain? Now, this can be one of the most, thank you, Julie, and congrats everyone. By the way, I'm going to take a pause of the show. I don't do this often, but y'all make sure y'all favorite and congratulate Julie on hitting 100 milli. Huge milestone. Nobody I can think of deserves it more than you. So congratulations, Julie. I wanted to stop the show and tell you that. Okay, now let's go back to being hurt. All right, let's go back to being hurt. There are different steps that we take when we're facing a pain based on hurt and sadness than anger. Anger is a lot more sharp. It's a lot more clear. Sadness is cutting. Sadness affects every aspect of our being. Has anybody ever been sad after like a breakup? It affects every aspect of our being. It's like wherever you go out, it saturates you. And it can be hard to think about forgiveness. Thank you, Kitty Commander. It can be hard to think about forgiveness when we're in the midst of an incredible sadness. But there's a few steps that we can take to get on that path. And some of them may actually surprise you. The first one, guys, is if you're really, really hurt, you're really, really sad, you're not necessarily dealing with anger, but maybe you're dealing with the depression. First thing I would do is you don't need to focus on forgiveness at that moment. That may be surprising to hear coming from me, but you don't need to focus on it. First thing you need to focus when you are in that space, guys, is and again, I'm not a mental health expert, guys, so I would say you definitely, if you are struggling with depression, definitely go speak to a mental health professional, but allow yourself to grieve, okay? Allow yourself to grieve and allow yourself to feel sad and allow yourself to work through those emotions. You don't have to have everything figured out right there and then. You don't have to be like, okay, my ex cheated on me, my ex dumped me and I didn't deserve it. This person, hurt me. This person did this. I need to just forgive right now. Allow yourself to feel those emotions. Allow yourself to deal with, exactly. Give yourself permission to grieve. Give yourself a little bit of grace. Give yourself a little bit of grace, and you don't have to focus on forgiveness right then. Just allow yourself to grieve. The second step we take is try not to act out simply based on our emotions. One of the things that's really hard to do when we're sad or depressed or hurt is to act outside of that hurt. Typically, when we're hurt, our actions, our mood, everything is dictated by that hurt. Remember our expression, hurt people hurt people. So it's very hard in that moment to act independently of that hurt, but do your best that you're not acting out and because of that hurt. If we can do that, then we can try to focus on a more logical perspective. And when we're hurt, guys, the main thing is we get professional help. The last step I'll tell you so we can get on that path of forgiveness, because again, it's not about forgiving when we're hurt necessarily, but getting on a path to where we can forgive again, is surround yourself. This is maybe the most important part, is surround yourself with family, friends, or people that love you, okay? Surround yourself with people who are gonna support you, who are not gonna judge you based on what you're going through, who are not gonna tell you, hey, snap out of it. Does anybody have that person in your life that's just like, snap out of it? All right, for me, it's my dad. Put a 1 in the comment section if you have that person in your life. Whenever you're hurt, whenever you're sad, they just like, I know that person. They're just like, snap out of it, get over it. I should see some 1s in the comment section. I know that everybody, they're just like, listen, snap out of it, grow up, be a man, be an adult. You just snap out of it. The tough love dove has its place, but guys, it is okay to not be okay. Surround yourself with people who are not going to judge you, who are not just going to try to fix you and make you better, but listen to you, support you, share that love with you, and help make you stronger. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's that strength that's going to have to be rebuilt. So let's recap. How do we get on a forgiveness path when we're not necessarily angry, but when we're saturated in hurt and sadness? The first thing we got to do is, guys, don't focus on forgiveness at that moment, okay? Allow yourself to grieve. Allow yourself to deal with those emotions. And then surround yourself with good people who are going to love you, who are going to support you. And then, guys, once you get to a place where you're starting to feel whole again, then you can start thinking of, okay, how am I going to release these feelings of hurt? How am I going to release these feelings of toxicity towards this person who hurt me? It's not something, unless you're Superman, that you can do just like that when you're hurt. And guys, I'm an advocate of forgiveness, okay? I'm an advocate of forgiveness. I'm someone who forgives very easily. It's a very natural process for me, which is one of the reasons why I do this show. But even me, guys, when I'm saturated in hurt, when I'm saturated in depression, when I'm saturated in sadness because of what someone did to me, it's very hard. Even for me, I can't just be, okay, I'm just going to release all these feelings. You got to deal with them. You got to process them. And if necessary, seek professional help. This is Forgiveness Culture, guys. Every week, we talk about the hope and peace that can be found in forgiveness. In just a few minutes, we're going to have our distinguished guest, Mojo, who's going to share his own forgiveness story. Guys, you definitely want to be here for this story. It's an amazing story, and I think it's really going to have an impact on everybody here. Before we do that, guys, we're going to talk about the Oh, no, she wasn't yawn. That was Epsy's emoji. Oh, that's okay, but she didn't know. She didn't know any better. If anybody knows Hoop's earrings, please tell them we're sorry. We did. I think she thought the yawning was like was like, she was like bored or something. I don't think it was on purpose, but anyways, Blake, thank you, sir. Before we get to our guest, guys, one last part of the show is we are going to talk about our forgiveness example. Every week we have an example of forgiveness that we talk about. This week comes from the Forgiveness Project book, which is what the show was based on. And this story comes from a woman named Roby Damelin, Robidamelin. And guys, I'm going to have to truncate this story because of time, because we do want to have our guest. Seems like I'm always running behind on this show, and I do apologize for that. So I hope you guys forgive me. But Roby lost her son, David. David was in the Israeli army, and he was killed by a Palestinian soldier during the conflict. Now, if you guys know, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been going on for a long time. And there's been wars fought, there's been conflict going on for decades in this region. And David, who was Roby's son, was actually killed in battle. And Roby was a guy who had his whole life. David was a guy who had his whole life ahead of him. And Roby said, I was beside myself with grief. I didn't know how to deal with it, and it made me hate the Palestinian people even more. I used to fantasize about his killer being tortured. I used to fantasize about his killer being kidnapped, and him being forced to face all the pain that I was now feeling. I realized then, after hearing some stories from the side of the Palestinian people, which is very interesting that she would actually listen to their stories, that there were similar stories that she heard from parents of Palestinian soldiers who had died. And she realized that they were feeling the same thing as she was feeling. She then realized that they were basically two sides of the same coin. She said that I did not want to be a part of the hatred that would proliferate this conflict. And even though I was only one person, I knew that in order to do my part, I had to forgive. And even though I'll never get my son back, and that pain will never truly go away, I could release the hatred and the animosity that I have towards his killer and towards the Palestinian people as a whole. And in so doing, we are one step closer to peace. Now, the thing is, guys, is that she's not saying that what this guy did was okay. It was obviously, guys, in war, it's always a terrible thing. Anytime someone dies in war, it's always a tragedy. But she realized then and there that there were stories on the other side of Palestinian soldiers getting killed by Israeli forces. And she said that, you know what, I don't want to be part of the hatred that they have towards me or I have towards them. The only way that we're going to have peace is if we get to a place where we can get rid of this hatred, and eventually, hopefully, there will be a resolution in that area, guys. We know that it's a very tough conflict that's going on over there, but we do pray for peace. Thank you for everyone who's here, guys. We are still going towards that 40 million, which I still feel, even though it's a little slow, I still feel like it's going to happen tonight. But I have turned off the gift sound. We do have our guests, guys. Every week we host guests who talk about their journeys with forgiveness, and they share stories every week about a time that they had to forgive someone in their life. And this week we've got one of the best. We've got a friend of mine, a friend of the stream, and a friend of the Meet Me app in general, an amazing guy, an amazing streamer, my friend Mojo. Y'all, please welcome Mojo to the box. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, Mor, how you doing? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And I say, as always, man, looking super fly.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm on Wi-Fi. I'm just when with this phone it loads in and I'm like kind of like laggy, but then it clears away. Hold on, let me try to get it better. I'm at a gig. I'm using the upstairs at a gig. I got permission.
Hey, you sound great to me, man. Before we jump into your story, man, for those who may not know who you are or are not familiar with you, just take a minute to introduce yourself for the people on the app, who you are, what you do, and when they can find you live.
Mojo, I'm pretty much I'm a musician by trade. I play around the tri-state area, corporate and private events. Started really streaming heavily, during the 2020, 2021, like the pandemic, and got a featured show around March of 2021, I think. So I think it was 2021. Yeah, it's 2021. And it's Name That Tune every Tuesday at 2 p.m. And it's a great show. It's like every featured show, the community keeps it going. Usually, I mean, it keeps you guys strong and keeps us motivated to keep doing content. So, yeah.
It's a great show. The only beef I have against it, man, is I'm at work. I'm at work when it's going on, so I can't always catch it. But
yeah, I just finished work. They decided to keep me longer, so I couldn't drive away. So here I am. And that's okay. I said, well, you're going to have to let me use the executive suite upstairs to do this. So they're like, go ahead. So I was like, all right, cool.
Nothing wrong with that. So tell us, I always say the best place to start is at the beginning. So walk us through a little bit of who your story involves and the people that it includes.
Well, it's about my mom. She was a singer. In her 20s and 30s, she was a graduate of Juilliard. She was a soprano, model, actor. She was involved in a lot of things in Brooklyn and New York. Beautiful lady. She actually, her and Bette Midler it was her and Bette Midler in the recording studio, and they didn't pick my mom, but they picked Bette Midler. So it was very close. But when she had kids, I guess she turned her life around. It turned her life around a little bit. She converted to Islam when she met my father in New York. And I was born in 1984. I was raised Muslim. And, we had a amazing, awesome Muslim household. We did Ramadan and Eid. We did all the Muslim things that family would do. Our stepfather, she divorced my father and she was with my stepfather. And we had a great life. I mean, we grew up. We did karate. We did everything that we had. All our video games and toys, everything that we wanted. My stepfather at the time was actually working with my biological father,
Oh, wow.
so doing security in New York City, Yassine Security. So basically, he was kind of still pseudo, supporting his children. But we grew up, and basically we moved out of New York because my mom didn't want the schools that she wanted us to be in the school districts in New York City. So we moved out to the city of New York, and we moved to Johnson City, New York, which is a southern tier of New York outside of Binghamton, New York. So we were there for a while with my stepdad, and we grew up there. We did martial arts. We made a lot of friends, and then all of a sudden we decided to move to Susquehanna, PA, which was interesting. We're basically in the middle of the woods, so we went from the city to the woods, and so we shot a lot of guns. We did a lot of hunting, things like that. And in 1995, my stepfather got into some trouble. So before he was Muslim, he did a lot of crazy bad things. He eventually, the three strike rule got him, and he was a driver for armed robbery in New York City. He didn't know they were going to rob this